Hello, I am Emily Kitchens, Assistant Professor of Acting at Kennesaw State University. This is so beyond exciting to me. This panel is made up of amazing professional artists who each run the gamut of what it is to be a citizen of the theater, being actors, writers, theater makers, musicians, and producers, whom I am blessed to call my friends. Y'all don't know how lucky we are. Oh my gosh!
Oh,
Yay.
I cannot even. And of course I'm like suddenly very aware of how much I just want to connect with each of you individually. But I just can't thank y'all enough for taking time to do this. This is a crazy, crazy time.
That it is.
These so let me make sure for my students' benefit, but also for all of you, so do you mind introducing yourselves, maybe, and saying whatever you'd like? I mean, let's just be friends like we are here and super casual.
any order, or would you like to call on us?
No, jump in whenever you like.
Okay, well, I'll get it started. My name is Alejandro. Most folks call me Ale, he, him, his pronouns. I'm calling from Miami, Florida, where I was born and raised. And I'm primarily a theater artist, though I've worn a lot of hats in my time, which may or may not come up enough.
Hi, I'm Toby Wyndham. I am in Los Angeles, California. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm a theater artist, but I live in my Maya Angelou. I am a theater artist and an actor and a producer and a director and a writer and a father and a husband and that's what I do. So and I'm super excited to be on this conversation as well. I'm really excited to get to know you all. I love Emily Kitchens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can go. I'm Taylor Bailey. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am calling in from Chicago, Illinois, where we finally got some sun after a lot of rain. I am currently the associate creative director of an organization called Play on Shakespeare. And beyond that, I'm sort of in the same camp of I'm a producer, director, sometimes performer, storyteller, like to wear a bunch of different hats. Lately, I've been doing a lot of Zoom, just like all the rest of us, and doing a lot of like Zoom consulting all of a sudden, like helping people like organize readings, and it's a lot, and it's been interesting.
I'm Lena Klingeman. I am primarily a theater artist, although also singer-songwriter, do some writing poetry mostly, and then some on-camera stuff. But my heart and gravitational pull goes off into classical work, which is how I met Emily, who is like my sister in arms forever. Yeah, that's kind of me. I live in New York normally, but I'm quarantining in Minneapolis right now at my parents' with my husband Mark, and yeah, just trying to make it through this time.
I'm V Chet. That's V like the letter V, and Chet like Chet Baker. I am originally from Dallas, Texas, but I live up in New York City right now. I
I'm just like so delighted to see these faces and to meet you all. Um, and I guess I'm a theater artist, and then some, and a person. I feel like more of a human being than anything right now. I feel
Amen.
very alive. I feel very feeling all my feelings. And I don't know. I just I'm happy to be with you all.
I'm not going to be apologetic about this for my students, but I'm totally crying. I just can't. I mean, they don't. Well, hopefully they will. But if they don't have a grasp on how lucky they are to like even witness like that moment, because I think that y'all are the current and the future of the American theater. I think we've kind of like created that in a little bubble right here, and I'm all verklempt. But let's be free, let's be casual, jump in whenever you want. We'll just be in dialogue, and you know, obviously I want to know how you are, and really I want to know how you are navigating your artistic lives during this pandemic.
I'll start. Navigating my artistic life just started happening in this pandemic, maybe like last week. And it was when Newsom said, hey guys, you're really going to be here until July. For me, I needed that because when it first happened, I was like, oh my goodness, I would wake up with anxiety and being like, are they going to call me to come into work next week? Are they going to call me? Are they going to? I'm trying. I don't want to look at my face while I'm talking.
Oh shoot!
No. You should.
Trying to play around.
And you should, but I'm gonna just do something with mine. Yeah. So I was like, it was giving me anxiety. I thought I had to wake up and be at work like the next day, and nobody would give me warning, which was really unsettling for me. And so I've been doing things with my child. Like I've been realizing that I needed a schedule. I have a 3-year-old, and I was like, I need a schedule with her, and I need to keep her mind active and going, and also cooking. So like I say, I've been doing stuff with my child, but my wife has been planning her activities, and I just execute those. But when it comes to meals, I've been super creative with being like, how do I cook? How do I figure these things out? And so I've been putting my creative juices there. Also Zoom calls, like in Zoom readings and Zoom plays. Shakespeare is really nice to watch via Zoom. And it's also so much of it. And I'm like, yo, what is happening? Like, and that's why my main reason to I was like, I'm excited for this conversation was because I was like, we're not about to do Midsummer and Pride and Prejudice coming out of this. I think it's going to be like two-handers, something that would be like, you know, you're going to stay close. But I love that we're doing those right here via Zoom.
Yeah, that's real. I'll build on that. I've had a handful of, you know, play development Zooms, some kind of concert reading style. By far, the thing that I feel has translated best is Shakespeare, and I've thought a lot about why. I do think I've had some productive sessions on new plays that have been facilitated really well and moderated well, and we've navigated the technology as best as we could. But man, something about just getting to sit in your own space and in your own time with that language and with those ideas. You savor it. You get to savor it a little bit. Speaking of savoring, I guess I'll sort of separate the question out a little bit between output and input. A lot of what Toby shared parallels me. My output has just started. Partly that's because I was wrapping up an administrative job at a theater. So I had a lot of Zoom meetings that were just about kind of contingency plans and budgets, and that's just wound down. Somebody will tell me how that goes. and the output has only recently started. I think I'm only slowly realizing now what I have, if anything, what I have to say about what's going on. Like, I think I've given myself time to, as Vichet said, like, feel my feelings, and they have been slow in some instances to kind of rise up, and they come in grayscale and discombobulated, and it's hard to parse them out a lot of times. So I just kind of waiting on that. But I will say something that has been on my mind that I do consider an artistic effort is listening, and trying to listen with all my senses, and trying to be full-bodied in my listening, not only to myself and the sort of vicissitudes of my own soul, but also just like my neighborhood, my industry, my larger extended family of co-laborators. You know, like, I was just trying to like keep my heart in my ear and my heart, and just try to get a sense, not in a sort of conceptual cerebral way, but like an actual sensation of what this moment means. And it's different for different folks, of course, but whatever is surfacing, I'm trying to catch as best as I can.
Ale, did you say keeping your ear in your heart?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. Mm.
Yeah, for me, I've really struggled in this time period, and I actually thought that it would be easier in many ways because I'm a bit of an introvert, and so I was like, join my party, come into this sort of like private space and think about things. But man, this has been really challenging, and I sort of vacillate between being like, well, there are people who are still working, and there are people, frontline workers, who are doing their job. So why is it so challenging for me to just do my job? Because I do think about it as a job as well. And then I vacillate between that idea and then this other idea of like, I mean, we're human beings first and then artists. I mean, at least for me. And how am I? How am I actually doing? And this thing that is happening feels very existential and feels like it's requiring us to really take stock of what it, of where we've come from and where we're moving towards. And I, at first when people started Zooming a bunch, and, there's lots of different readings and workshops on Zoom, and I was really skeptical of all of it because I just felt like, are we just trying to translate what we do directly into the confines of a computer screen? And like, what does that mean? And are we not actually really thinking about why this has happened? And are the systems that we work in, are the institutions that we work in, are they actually working? And should we be taking this time to like completely start anew and really restructure and really reprioritize and really think about what is leading us in our work? Is it for capitalistic reasons, or are we actually doing work that that makes people feel less alone, makes people feel seen, witnessed, observed, brings communities together? Yeah, that's what's been on my heart a lot these days.
I love that. I'll go next. I would just like want to say like yes to everything you all just said, and the like it's so day to day, and I've struggled a lot with my sorry, can I take myself off of seeing myself? There she goes. It feels just like day to day I wake up and I sort of like have a conversation with my muse that really she didn't want to come out to play until, like Toby said, I really like had to accept not just how long we'll be in like a shelter in place situation, but that like any amount of like, okay, voiceover might come back online sooner, and maybe film and TV might come back online sooner, but that theater, like, which feels even more these days like I'm connected to the fact that that's my lifeblood, or the seed, or the germination of why I started being a storyteller. That having to, when I think around that same time that Toby was talking about, like the show that I was waiting to hear if it would go, which would take me through November and could be pushed, just got moved a whole year to a whole new season. I had to like have just a sort of like, okay, a release, I guess, and kind of let go into this is what it is. And it's a really, I feel like a very kind of Zen practice of like being a human being, like Ichat said, like, and I'm realizing that I think there's been for me, a sense of like losing that connection to my human beingness. I mean, I kind of a wild last couple years with for-profit theater, and doing a first national tour and then a Broadway show, and really like after that needing some time to like detox, and as wonderful as it is, and I don't regret it, like detox from it and come back to being like, I want my collaborators, I want the ephemeral thing that we don't just repeat for 2 years straight, I want connection, and that was starting to sort of bloom again in me after a difficult personal experience in our family, and then this shelter in place came, and I've been trying to just like learn from it and sit with it and see what comes. And what's been frustrating is that not much has, and grappling with like, a Zoom play workshop where it felt like, okay, the collaboration can happen, but then that sharing, that it wasn't a audience reading, that sharing doesn't, I'm still missing that feeling, or someone called it some great thing of like, you click the Zoom off and then the void kind of surrounds you, and it's really bizarre from like the ritual of theater. I mean, even film and TV, but like of like everybody like wrapping up rehearsal, or your call time is gone, and you have that process of like having everything be in your head. And anyway, I'm sort of jumbling thoughts, but that's kind of how I feel like my brain is one day I wake up, and most of the days like my muse is just not there. But recently, like there's been little like either like firecrackers, or like kind of grayscale, like Ali said, like grayscale, not the Game of Thrones thing, but that's been my experience. And like, and little structure has been super helpful. Like I'm writing this weird thing for Colorado Shakespeare Festival about an idea that I had, that like they just gave me a structure of like, you've been in our season before, like will you do a little video? And I found myself like not wanting to perform, like because I had played Hamlet there, and I was like, I created a Hamlet PSA for like social distancing, that Hamlet would actually argue for permanent social distancing. And but that like little bit of structure was like, it like came, a lot was there. And I think, as Toby is exactly right, as we start to accept, but then also get bits of our structure back, I'm hoping that my humanness will kind of start to bubble again, because it's been super lonely, I think. The end.
I mean, yes, I resonate with like so much of what everyone's been talking about. We're in a really strange and unique position in my company, because we are theater adjacent, but we're not a producing organization. And we are almost entirely funded by one private, like family foundation that is just extremely supportive of what we've been doing. And we kind of, right in the beginning, like right as the first sort of like lockdown orders were like coming, we realized that we had the funding and a budget that looking forward, we're like, there's so many of these little things, little events that were coming that we're just like, this isn't going to happen. Even if we come out of this, like we were sort of extra programming with other organizations. There's just no way any of this is going to happen. And so we made the decision to go in and completely sort of do a zero-based budgeting process with our budget for the year and start from zero and rebuild our budget and try to allocate like as much money as we could towards developing some programs, some online programs. And the major focus at the time was like, how quickly can we get this going so that we can start paying artists right now? And we launched from that, starting in late March, we launched a 10-week long reading series where we're reading, one of the plays every Friday, which we've been doing since the end of March. We are now to the last two in the 10-week series. We're reading Titus on Friday, and we're reading Hamlet. We're closing out the series with Hamlet next Friday, and by the end of it, we will have worked with like 160 different artists in the last 10 weeks, and paying everyone an honorarium to be there with us. And, from a professional standpoint, it's felt like really wonderful and structured in order to be able to like respond and sort of help right now in a way that we could. I can also piggyback on the commentary about Shakespeare. I mean, when we put the first one up, honestly, our thought going into it was like, this is likely to just be the most boring thing that anyone has ever witnessed. But the priority is like paying people right now. So I don't really give a fuck. Like I just want like work. And then it happened. And then afterwards we were all just like, oh my God, I can't believe that was as engaging as it was. And, we had after that, we had some expectations about what was going to happen, and it didn't end up coming, most of it didn't end up coming true. We really thought, okay, we think this will be a great space for like the lesser known plays and the histories. But the comedies we think are going to really struggle in this space. And it's the exact opposite. The comedies like sing in this space, and the histories, it's a lot of detail to sit through with no staging. It's like the characters are speaking so much detail, and so it's easy for me, and I'm doing it right now. It's easy for me to get lost in the structure of it, the amount of work that it's been sort of getting it off its feet and learning how to do it in Zoom in like effective, clean ways. One of the reason we called it the First Reads series was because we wanted to replicate sort of that first table read experience. And so rather than it being a performance, we're inviting people sort of around the table. We cast a director and we cast a dramaturg as well as a playwright in the room. And the way and it's structured so we stop after a certain amount of acts. We stop like 3 times over the course to just discuss the play, what we've learned, like what things like that. And from the beginning we said we got to eliminate the polish element. We have to eliminate the like desire to push the performance of this sort of to the boundaries of what Zoom is capable of, because I feel like we would have been chasing polish forever. Like it's just this, you're always going to be able to do that. And so we've tried to pull it back and to take the pressure off of people. And they've been so fun. But what I was saying was that it's easy for me to get lost in the structure of this and to get lost in talking about the work that we're doing, to sort of deflect from the personal. And how I'm actually doing in all of this. And I was really grateful for all the structure at first. And now I sort of find myself just feeling like there's so much kind of going on inside of me that's just like living right here, that doesn't have a lot of space. And thinking I have a lot of anxiety around the future, especially with our field. I was already feeling like I was kind of at a crossroads with our field in general, before this all happened. And now feeling, just very uncertain about what's coming. I have a lot of sort of ideas and kind of hypotheses about what could happen and how we could go. But there's just a lot of uncertainty, and watching a lot of our larger organizations like really struggling to figure this out, which is why I think it's going to be smaller organizations that end up sort of pushing through in really the more artistically exciting ways, on the other side of this, whatever that means. But just been trying to find the things that I can connect to that make me feel connected to the wider world and what's happening, without becoming too engrossed, and too overwhelmed by it. There's been like the neo-futurists here in Chicago. I've a long-standing love affair with them. I used to be a member of that company, and they have responded so beautifully in this moment and taking their show online. And it's wonderful because they're reacting to what's happening, but they're reacting in all kinds of outlandish ways, which is very neo-futurist. And some of it's incredibly touching, and some of it's incredibly funny. And it's all in short, sort of, their typical 2-minute long, like, snap little snacks of pieces. And so it feels really ingestible. But they had a piece where each week it linked you to a live stream of a standing vigil. It was a live stream that was just in perpetuity. It was just going, and they were keeping it refreshed. And you, as the audience member, could choose to stay with that live stream for as long as you want. And it was it's just in the camera frame. It's just candles, and then on the wall is sort of written the number of losses that we've had in Chicago. And it was watching it was the first moment that I actually felt like actually emotionally connected to what my city was experiencing and going through. And more so than reading the news, and more so than watching, whatever. It was that small artistic offering, and it really kind of cemented in my mind like the place and the need for us during this time, and especially in the time to come.
This, like, there are common themes emerging about, I feel like this is a time of listening. That is really like what this kind of global theme seems to be. And I don't know about you, but I find myself being very aware that I'm being called to be still. We all are, and like maybe that a byproduct of that is listening. But I'm busier than ever, and I can't stay still. And I am just like, whatever it is, I have to like have my hands in it, even if it's just it's schoolwork or whatever. But how do we give ourselves this space in a time where we're being asked to be more contained, to be creative, to listen to each other, to ponder, wonder about how not only theater or performing arts survive after pandemic, but how can they thrive? I don't know what you got.
I'll just reflect on this, because that is obviously a question. It's probably the title of dozens of panels that are going, right? Like performing arts survive. And I guess hearing you all codifies, is that the word? For me, like that I have this follow-up question when I hear a title like that or a question like that, which is which of the performing arts are we talking about? What aspect of it? Like, it sounds like one of the things that's surfacing in some of the responses is that this pandemic has driven this wedge and cleaved like the ancient art of communal storytelling from its institutional framework in this country, right? And so we have different responses to both of those. Some of us are feeling a more burning need for that ancient art, and I think that's real with me. I feel the need for gathering and for stories more than I ever have in my life. And in the room, you know, corporeal storytelling. And yet, man, do I have some serious, to Vichette's earlier point, do I have some serious beef? And I'm making up my mind. I mean, we can sort of have a tangent on just the institutional framework that's held up the theater in this country for however many years. And I don't know if that's the direction this wants to go in, but my goodness, like the question of whether it should come back, and if it does, what it should look like, you know. But I don't know if it's helpful, but it feels like those are being parsed right now. So I offer that, you know, for whatever it's worth.
I mean, I think that like the train tracks, it feels like the, you know, the personal and the larger socio-political, like we're just, the train ran off the tracks. And so like it feels like there's this larger thing at play where both for theater but also for ourselves, it's like, what track were you on, and was it working, and what wasn't working? And sometimes, like especially in a capitalist society, it's like, well, it's going, you know, it's, so we just keep going, and things accrue literally monetarily, but also like the emotion of theater, the way we're creating it, and we're not, there's not even time for any institutions to like survive, to stop and question, you know, how they're running, unless, you know, something, you know, like what is this new term that I love, disruptors, like unless something disrupts it, or like a new AD comes in. But even then you see a lot of like similar changes or similar things have to kind of be done because that's the way it's done. And friends who've run companies have talked about how tough it is to then wrangle some bit of change. And so there's this like larger scale, and I don't mean to disparage for-profit theater, but it is like, that just seems like that's the thing, that it's just going to keep creating the way it's been. And it for me, it didn't feel like the most humanizing, whereas I felt a very clear difference in almost any other circumstance. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that, but anyway, but I like, it's something in me then that makes me go back to like my childhood, and is like, why did I start doing this? Why did I start like sitting in front of a mirror and trying to do Ace Ventura's jokes? Like, why did I, which I did, and like, why did I like act out things that I would see often on comedy and TV, but or even create just like weird stories that, you know, we all wrote when we were kids. Like, what did that come from? And it wasn't just to get health insurance. It's like, you know, which I know, and part of me, I wanted to say like, and Emily knows I don't want to take it here, but like my last year was, we dealt with a loss in our marriage and trying to get pregnant, and it created a big amount of trauma. And I learned a lot about our brains and how difficult it is for our brains to do really small things like memorizing, and both like for theater, but also for like your memory and a lot of some of the similar things after my loss that happened then are happening now with my brain. And I'm like, our brain computers are just so packed. Like, we're waking up every morning going, what's new this morning? Okay, is the mask clean? Do I have enough of this or this? When am I going to go grocery shopping? God, if you have a kid, like, just like homeschooling, like, and I have my own kind of like, it's a weird kind of guilt that I don't have to be on the front lines of this, and I don't have a child to be right now to be such a weird thing to say, but educating. And yet there's a lot to then just like sit in and hold in terms of like your worth and value if what you do is usually very communal. So sorry if that was a bit disparate, but those are the things that I think are just spinning for me every day, you know. And I think, I hope we learn to talk about, I mean, I've read a couple things where they're like, we don't want to call this trauma. And I'm like, but I think we should identify the thing it's doing to our brains. And it's really hard to process, whether you're have a lot of time on your hands or no time to process. I think there's probably a very similar thing happening up there.
To me, what you are saying is so beautiful, and so the art and so the work that we as theater artists, as we as creators do. I think that's where, like, I used to say this back in like 2000, and it didn't make any sense to me then. But it was when I read The Seagull, and I thought, like, was it Triplev? Was that the one that was like new forms? They got to have new forms and all that type of stuff. I thought he was genius. And I was like, dude, somebody needs to hear you, man. Like, we totally need that. Now more than ever, I think new forms are emerging, and they've been emerging over the past 10 years, I feel. Like, just new ways to do stuff. But like this right here, this forum is a place that in the way my producer mind works, is a forum that if we put this out in a park, just on Zoom, and say people social distance and just watch this, it's similar to what Taylor was speaking of just like standing there and having this image you just feel it. Like, if people just feel this stuff, and then we're all in it feeling together, because that's the thing that I find that I'm missing from these Zoom conversations. Like, I did a reading the other day, and everybody was like, dude, that was like so weird. Like, it was just 3 of us. And like, oh, it was so weird that we experienced that. And then it was like, why did it happen? I was like, because I couldn't feel any of you guys. Like, I had no clue. Like, we had been reading the play together for like 2 years. We finally did it over Zoom, and I was like, I had no clue what I was like. I don't know how you felt in this moment. I was just looking at the screen, and I'm actually affecting myself right now. Like, I'm just listening to this stuff in my head, and I gotta be like, oh, okay, this is what I think this is feeling like right now. But really, it was just me manifesting whatever energy I was getting through the audio, which is what no, it's not. It's not. It's not what people that can't see or can't hear, because they still feel energy. You know what I'm saying? They still can feel that. I don't have that thing. And so it's like, but hearing the emotion and the feeling of what we're talking about, it's something that people, I think, need to see and feel. Also, I think these superpowers, I've always thought that these big theater companies, they need to find a way to support the not so big ones. And I think this is a great time for us to be able to do that and to come together. I think I'm a big producer in my house. And I was like, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna just do it right here in the house. And then if people wanna come, I think they'll come. And this is the time for us to do that and to be like, yo, and I have a connection to ACT and OSF. And I'm like, hey, OSF, can you support me in how I'm doing this? Because we need to get paid. That's what I'm so glad to hear Taylor talk about. It's like, yo, we're paying people. And I'm finally at a place where it's like, the money matters. It really does. To enrichment opportunities are great, but let's get this cheese too while we're in quarantine. I said a lot. I'm gonna stop.
I just, like, my brain exploded when you were talking about money, you know, because like it's like a taboo thing and we don't want to talk about it, but like people are unemployed. We're unemployed, right? I'm not unemployed, just to be clear. I'm still doing my day job, which feels more busy than it's ever felt in my entire life. and to be totally frank, I had a nervous breakdown like 2 weeks ago, like tears, partner, dog, like I was just like feeling it because I felt so tired and stressed out, and I was doing more work than I've ever done in my life from the confines of my home, and then feeling the existential cloud of like, why are we doing anything right now? And then, it's something that's happened. Most of my work in the last couple of years has been through writing. So I'm a playwright, and I've now dealt with a succession of indefinite postponements for my work, and then also commissions that have been canceled because they now no longer, they can't guarantee that money to me anymore. And it made me just, I don't know, it was so maddening to me because I was like, but this is when I need the money. Like this moment is when I actually need it more than I've ever needed it. And now it makes me think about this question of like, how do you support artists? And and you hear a lot of that language when you're in the theater about how we support artists, how we wrap our arms around artists and make them write the next whatever play that is going to change the theater landscape. But that's financial, and like the basis of it is financial, so that it can clear up all that stuff in our brains to actually channel our muses and like to actually do the work that we're meant to do, and I just these conversations, it's like every phone call where somebody tells me the thing is postponed or the thing is canceled, I'm like, no, this is when I need you. This is when I need it. This is actually when I need it. Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
I mean, it does, like what you're bringing up is so, exciting to me about like the next generation of performing artists, and like, how do we say, okay, you want to train, you want to do this. What is the opportunity there for these young people? What is the opportunity for, or maybe the responsibility?
I was talking to someone about the fact that, as we look backwards in time to sort of find a way of sort of contextualizing and framing what we're experiencing right now, there's obviously like been a lot of focus on the Great Depression, a lot of focus on the late teens and the pandemic, the flu pandemic then, during World War One. And one thing that was interesting that I heard was that um, historians, like, there's been a lot of digging to actually find everyday accounts of what was happening during the pandemic in 1918, because people just weren't actually recording their experiences. I think much like us, I imagine life felt incredibly overwhelming, and if I'm sitting down to make something or write something, it's often an escape from what I'm experiencing rather than documenting what I'm experiencing. But I guess I think that one challenge I would kind of offer to new sort of up and coming folks is to say, like, document what you're experiencing, document what day-to-day life looks like, and take photos. I mean, I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, when I was out and about running errands and seeing all the signs in the fronts of businesses and all the signage that's everywhere about what we're experiencing and how to proceed safely, and thinking, oh, I should take some pictures of some of this stuff, because in 40 years, like, looking back, um, that could be interesting. And so I guess that's been on my mind, like, actually documenting what we're experiencing, not just for yourself to look at later, but for other people to look at later. And also because we cannot, as this has come up, we cannot simply rely on, the media to do this, because the framing and the shaping has different incentives than what it would come from us. And as corporations and as our governments sort of begin this sort of great gaslighting that's happening about, you know, the reality of what's happening outside, I think that having that history down, having something you can refer back to and say, no, this is real, this was real, these things happened to us, this was who was lost, like, it feels like that's a part of our job as storytellers to at least document, whether or not you choose to do anything with it. And for some folks, I think that's too challenging and it's too hard. I mean, I say it and I'm not doing it because I find it really hard, but it also seems like it's going to be necessary.
Be safe, be fed, like find like food and shelter first. Like, I don't want to assume that that's easy or that that's a given, right? So like, get yourself safe, get yourself fed, get clean water. Like, but right now there ain't no rush, there ain't no hurry. So give yourself the opportunity to imagine a blank canvas, get all science fiction on this moment. You know what I mean? Like, what's the adjacent possible? What's the, because we're going to need to iterate in new futures. And I think folks who are young, folks who are in school, folks who are coming out of school, to the point Toby was making earlier, y'all are going to be our guides, you know what I mean? And we're going to really take our cues from you all a lot. So the more you can allow yourself to like get some of that stuff that's been there before, it'll be there. You can reconnect with it down the road if it means a lot to you to be part of to be a series regular, or to be, you know, on a national tour. But right now you have this invitation, this little aperture of opportunity to say, what can it be?
The need for touch is going to be there, and and like you said, I got to give this at the beginning of it. Be safe when you do it, but I believe guerrilla theater and guerrilla happenings need to start happening. They are going to start happening. Find that space where you can be safe and just create that thing and just let it live. Find a way to safely invite people and be like, yo, this is what it's happening. Pop up. And for every pop-up theater that you go to that you don't like, pop up the theater that you like. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, theater's made out of guerrilla. It came out of like, I wanting, and powers that be are not allowing me. And so this is the time. I'm going to get back to it. That's just for me.
I love that so much, Toby. I love it. Cause like I'm coaching some kids that I hadn't been doing it for a while, and I had this time and I was like, I want to be connected to what we do. And this is one of the ways that I can do it. And I just talked to a girl who's graduating a program, and she's like, I feel like they're just pushing me to, like, even now, like an LA or New York, you know, binary choice. And she's like, not going to, she's going to stay in Seattle. And I'm like, stay, you can do it. You can do this. And also you're starting from scratch. Like, it's hard for us who like were pushed down that thing. We went on a path, and now that path is like, whoop. And so when that path has not been there, like Toby said, open it wide open. And there's stuff. And what's hard for me is that I'm having to take off like layers of an onion and be like, peel back to my childhood and go to something that's really innate. But if I can speak to them, you all, the students, like what Toby's saying is the thing that has been on my mind of like, you're learning, and you were just like sponges sopping up. And the best part of graduating, if you were about to graduate, or if they're not, I'm not sure, but is that you are playing in that sandbox, and when you're in school, even when you come out of school, you get to kind of fail in a beautiful way, in a brilliant, beautiful way. And I'm worried for this group of humans being mentored by even someone like me, who is like, I don't know, you know, what to do now, to like try to keep that sandbox open. And I think human touch is part of it. Like, be safe, but maybe you touch the person you're quarantining with outside with a, like, you know, audience of people who are very far from you, and maybe sound is not our key thing anymore. But like, I don't know, but that every time a student asks me this kind of a question, I'm like, keep doing, keep the muscle going. And for me, some parts of that muscle feel right and some feels wrong, as I mentioned earlier, you know, and that's just me, that's my toolbox. But like, there might be some things that surprise you, and I have just like such hope for this generation who are in school, that they push the boundaries of not just online but like in person, you know, connection and storytelling and theater.
Looking,
Yes.
someone shared with me. Have y'all seen this quote? I feel like it's going around a little bit from the Provincetown Players in 1918, from George C. Cram. So this was like obviously during World War I and during the pandemic, back then. It's a bit of a long quote, but this went out to people in their fundraising and like brochure that they mailed out. And so George Cram, who was just a member of that, George Cram Cook was a member of that company, and he said, 7 of the Provincetown Players are in the army or are working for it in France, and more are going. Not lightheartedly now, when civilization itself is threatened with destruction. We who remain have determined to go on next season with the work of our little theater. It is often said that theatrical entertainment in general is socially justified in the dark time as a means of relaxing the strain of reality and thus helping to keep us sane. This may be true, but if more were not true, if we felt no deeper value in dramatic art than entertainment, we would hardly have the heart for it now. One faculty we know is going to be of vast importance to the half-destroyed world, indispensable for its rebuilding, the faculty of creative imagination. That spark of it, which has given this group of ours such life and meaning as we have, is not so insignificant that we should now let it die. The social justification which we feel to be valid now for makers and players of plays is that they shall help keep alive in the world the light of imagination. Without it, the wreck of the world that was cannot be cleared away and the new world shaped. And someone sent it to me yesterday, and I just was like, oh, yes, like, yes.
I mean, I'm just like in awe of all of the things that everyone is saying. My heart has grown like 3 sizes bigger. And, you know, something just like that, the idea that the faculty of creativity is the thing and imagination is the thing that is going to bring us out of this. And I think that, you know, for we like to think of ourselves as theater artists or whatever, but creativity and imagination knows no bounds, you know? And I think that if I were to say anything to any student, which is like who am I? I would just say that follow your creative impulses, follow your imagination, and let it lead you versus deciding or making decisions about who you think you are. I think it is important to know who you are to a certain degree, but that thing is fluid and that thing changes and evolves. And to me, it's those impulses, those survival instincts are there. And I think that you should honor them because they're true. And I really connected with Ollie's preamble about even giving advice to students, because we are all adults and we don't know anything right now. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know anything. And I mean, we know some things, but we also don't know anything. And even the idea, like I've been asked as a theater artist, as a person to be a mentor to certain people. And to me, I've just felt so uncomfortable with that relationship in a lot of ways, because sometimes I sit down with these younger people, and I find that I learn so much about what I want or what I need or where I want to go into the world from younger people. And I would just say to younger people, like, just keep going and do what you're doing. And I'm just so inspired by this younger generation of thinkers and innovators, and this sort of like um, uh, freedom from this of needing to support the status quo or needing to support the power structures that I know that I've compromised so many parts of my life, because I've been told that this is what you uplift, this is the thing that you keep, this is the power structure that you have to keep up so that the whole thing doesn't come tumbling down. And every time I have a conversation with a younger person, I'm always like, do that, do that, do that. Because so much of my adulthood has been about undoing the layers, the onions, like undoing these layers of shame and guilt and feeling like I had to be somebody in support of somebody else. And like, do you. Okay, I'm done.
I'm like, let's go. What's the company we're starting? Like, let's go right now. Let's just get off this call and go do something. I just wanted to do a light connection to something that Vichette just said, to something that Taylor said, because I think there's a sinew there. You know, it occurs to me, Vichette, that like being nourished by the youth, and that being a symbiotic relationship, because I know you well enough to know that your mentees also were nourished by their exchanges with you, even if it was you offering your questions and your vulnerability. Let's be real. You know, people who know Vichette have no doubt about that. That is actually more historically the norm. Like, it is this US Western context that has compartmentalized what was a natural intergenerational flow in so many other cultures and moments, where we didn't live and assume that like kids stay in their lane over here, plays happen over here in these buildings, you know, everything in its compartments. And so just to connect that to Taylor's encouragement to question everything, all of it just started as like ink on a page by somebody, usually by a man, usually by a white man, that wrote it down and made a mark on a page. And don't be confused by like the legalese that it may come to you in. That legalese was just people doing their jujitsu on it to make it, to obfuscate it, to make it impenetrable to you. But it all started as an idea in someone's head. So why not it be your head? You know what I mean? Like, why not that idea become from your head? Sorry, y'all are inspiring, so I'm on my soapbox a little bit.
I have to say, I'm so inspired by this whole thing, because it's something that I'm learning about myself in isolation with myself, is that exactly what Vichette said, is that nothing owns your creativity. These boxes of, you know, actor, playwright, producer, like these boxes we learn to put ourselves in so we can stay in our lane and succeed in that lane, are quite limiting to the whole human that we are often. And some, if you're really lucky, maybe your career is dynamic and rangy enough that you don't really notice that. But often like, it's what I keep saying, like I'm going back to my kid self and like, how does my creativity work and play, as opposed to like, what's going to happen to theater the way I know it, and what will my next career move be. And I've been on such that path that, like, my hair is crazy, guys. But anyway, it's just, I really, like, I don't have the answer. And I like look to our younger generation so much, and like the people I am mentoring, I'm just like so emboldened by their ideas, and like there's still their tenacity too. And so I guess the thing I just keep looking at is like, like the onion again, peeling it back and being like, what is at the center of me creating? And I have found that I think why I was drawn to theater was the communal connection. And I love collaborating, and I love even just talking to this group of humans that I am sitting here with right now feels creative. It feels inspiring. And I'm realizing, like, right as we speak, like, that's why that muse has not been bubbling. Like, we've all been deprived of that to a large extent. And so finding those ways to fuel whatever your creativity, and some people might be introverts and need like reading book time, like whatever, but it's helpful for me to be asking that question, because then I can at least try to find a means to be me in this collaborative environment talking, and then go take that and make something with it. It might look different than I've ever made anything before, but yeah.
Emily and Vichette and I all went to the same university, and I know that I think we've all done a little bit with like younger students there in recent years. And I, when I was back a couple of years ago doing a workshop, we brought Hansel Jung and Aaron Malkin with us to Evansville to do a little workshop of Hansel's work on Romeo and Juliet, and it was wonderful to be back. And I was just so fascinated by them, and I fell in love with them so hard, just so fast. And I think what the one thing that they talked about that really blew me away was that they're living in such a different time than when we went to school, which it's still just very strange to be adapting to like being old enough that you like say things like that. But they grew up, and they have access to the world in a way that we didn't at that time, in terms of what's going on, what's exciting going on in the world of performance, in the world of theater, like beyond us. I mean, we were doing like American canon. We were doing a lot of like Brown plays, and I mean like Dust Bowl Brown, like plays. And like there's the world of new work didn't unfold for me until I left college and discovered it, and realized that I wanted to dedicate my life to new work. And but they found themselves, these students had found themselves so frustrated by the limitations that were being placed upon them, and by the kind of work they were being allowed to do, and what they weren't being allowed to do, that they created their own like alternative programming like series. And what they did was they started at the top of semesters and at the end of semesters. They would either come back a week early or stay a week late, and they would workshop like a performance of like a play or a musical or something that they had written themselves. They would build it, they would like put it together. And at our school there were all these theater houses, like rent houses around campus that had been historically occupied by theater students. And they started producing these works in the basements of all of the theater houses. And so all of the students would work on it all week long, and they would build sets, they would have costumes, like they would just do as much as they possibly could. And then everyone would come like and see the performance, the one performance that they would do. And then that would immediately devolve into a house party that would then go on all night. And they were telling me about it, and I remember getting so emotional because I just was so impressed. I'm so impressed all the time by the generation under us, with just how willing they are to just say like, that's kind of dumb the way y'all been doing that for the last 100 years. Like maybe the way y'all been thinking about gender, guys, it's kind of I don't know. Like I'm so jealous like of not being a part of that generation sometimes. And so in a way, I guess the thing I would say is trust yourself, because those instincts are right. And those are the things that are going to work right now. And the thing I didn't mention about that quote from a moment ago is that the person who they were programming in their season in those years, in those World War I and pandemic years, was Eugene O'Neill. And so I just feel like the next generation of art, like coming out of producing during this time, like there's a lot of possibility, but I don't necessarily think it's going to come from our institutions. I think it's going to come from us, if that makes sense.
I mean, I'm so inspired. Yes, we're starting that theater company. I'm in. But anything else before we kind of I could talk to y'all forever.
Don't be stupid, because I've enjoyed this so much, guys. Like I'm totally feeling it in my spirit right now. And so I just may send something in one of those email threads that Emma started. And we've been saying, be safe, and we'll find the time to see if we could read or do something. And because this has been something that I needed, that I didn't know that I needed.
Same. I didn't know I needed it. Thank you for doing it, Em. Thank you. I thought it would be like sharing info, and you're like, oh, it's feeding me. Feeding
Yeah,
me.
I will add to the students who listen, and Em, you can cut this out if it makes you embarrassed. You are so lucky to have this woman be a shepherd to you. And if there's one of the many things that you ought to be attentive to about her is the way in which she cultivates and nourishes deep relationships. And you can get all like tactical and say, yeah, it's true. In the business, relationships are currency, and relationships are the thing that are going to get you a job. That's one aspect of it. But the aspect I want to focus on is if you live a life like Emily has, you can send a couple of emails and get some dope folks like the ones that I've been blessed to spend this time with, to say, yeah, let's make something. Yeah, you're throwing you're doing a basement play that turns into a house party, which, by the way, that is exactly what I need right now. Like, that is the exact thing. Like, watch a play and then just bust out, like, oh my God. You don't get this in any other way but by being decent and humane and compassionate and there for folks. And that's what Emily's been from day one for me. So that's a lesson that I would lift up from just being in her presence. Keep those people close to you, man, because you're gonna need them.
Yes.
Just wow. Yep. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by and engage your craft with me and these amazing professional theater artists today. Stay safe, be well, be kind,